You're listening to Retro Reels, a show that looks back on films from time gone by and recalls the various events, trends, and perspectives that inform their creation. I'm your host, Hannah Walensky, here to guide you through a trip to the past via the silver screen. This week, I finally watched Chen Kaige's award-winning historical drama from 1993, Farewell, My Concubine. I say finally because I've known about this movie for a long time and known it was important and just never got around to watching it. In part because it's 3 hours long, but after watching several 3-hour-long movies, I don't feel anything anymore. No epic-length movie is capable of hurting me now. I am a hardened warrior of the 3-hour movie. Before we get into it, though, there's a lot of historical context to cover because the movie spans several tumultuous decades in 20th century China as the nation struggles to be reborn in the wake of the Qing dynasty, and certain key events from this time period drive the narrative. It is a lot to cover, more than I can realistically do justice in a single episode, so I can only offer a vastly oversimplified version. The film starts in the 1920s, some years after the fall of the last dynasty, the end of imperial rule, and the rise of the Republic of China. You first meet the two main characters, Douzi and Shitou, as young children slaving away at a Peking opera training house. You follow them from this painful upbringing through their young adulthood under Japanese occupation during the Second Sino-Japanese War, their eventual defeat and retreat in World War II, quickly followed by the civil war between the nationalists and communists, which saw the commies win in 1949 and finally the Cultural Revolution occur in 1966. The movie ends sometime in the 70s, shortly after Mao's death in 1976. That's about 50 years worth of rather hectic history, all of which took place before I was born, but did much to set the scene for the iteration of China, and the iteration of Taiwan for that matter, that I know now. The production, filming, and casting of Farewell, My Concubine was a collaborative effort between China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, the likes of which were common during this time in Asian cinema. The original story was authored by Hong Kong writer Lillian Lee. A copy of this book was given to Chinese director Chen Kaige by Taiwan-born actress and film producer Xu Feng, with Chen working alongside both Lee and a Chinese screenwriter to adapt it to the screen. Chen brought on this Chinese screenwriter to help rework the script because he felt it lacked a certain authentic Chineseness, having been written by someone who was brought up in relative comfort in Hong Kong, and therefore didn't actually live through the upheaval depicted in the novel. Specifically, Chen, who was born in 1952, lived through the Cultural Revolution. In fact, he was a member of the Red Guards, a mass student-led paramilitary social movement first mobilized by Mao to lead the charge against China's four olds, i.e., old ideas, old culture, old customs, and old habits. When he was just 14 years old, which was actually a typical age bracket for the group as it was largely comprised of high schoolers, he denounced his own father, who was also a film director. It was a decision he later came to deeply regret and that recurs throughout his filmography, including Farewell, My Concubine, which sees the characters betray their closest friends under pressure from the increasingly radical and bloodthirsty Red Guards. But we'll get to that in a bit. For this episode, I, of course, had to get a bit of music from the opera in question, which translates literally to "The hegemon king bids his lady farewell," and describes a scene in which King Xiangyu, who battled eventual founder of the Han Dynasty Liu Bang for the unification of China, realizes he is surrounded by enemy forces and facing certain defeat. First, he calls forth his horse, asking it to run away to save itself. The horse refuses. Then he calls for his wife, Consort Yu. Realizing they will soon meet their end, she begs to die alongside her king, but he refuses. When the king is distracted for a moment, Consort Yu commits suicide with his sword. The music isn't the same without the visual, of course, but it is a pretty fun listen. Now, this movie is about 170 minutes long, it covers 50 years, and it's no fun to just list everything out that happens in order, so I'm just gonna give as basic of a rundown of the main characters and goings-on as I can. I mentioned earlier that you follow Douzi and Shito from their humble beginnings as part of a Peking opera troupe in the 1920s. Douzi, who has naturally delicate features, is trained to play Dan, or female roles, while his close friend Shito trains as Sheng, or male roles. They undergo years of rigorous education, including no small number of genuinely very traumatic events that ultimately pays off in their early adulthood when they achieve fame and attract the attention of a wealthy patron, Mr. Yuan. Douzi, now going by Die, and Shito, now Xiaolou, are best known for performing Farewell, My Concubine. Die obviously nurses a genuine love for and loyalty to Xiaolou that mirrors consort Yu's feelings for the king. Xiaolou does not reciprocate in the same manner and sees Die more like his brother in opera. When Xiaolou marries a prostitute named Juxian, the relationship between him and Die begins to fall apart. Matters are further complicated by the Japanese invasion of China during the late 30s through 1945, and they end up parting ways for a while. When their old Shifu dies, they take in one of his old students, Xiao Si, whom Die trains to play Dan roles. Then the Reds win the Civil War in 1949, and Xiao Si gets caught up in the political furor, joining the Red Guards. Mr. Yuan is executed for being a class enemy, despite his love for Chinese culture, and Xiaolou ends up interrogated by the Red Guards. After an argument with Die, whom he has come to resent for his strict training methods, Xiao Si gets revenge by alerting the Red Guards to Die's so-called counter-revolutionary acts. As the Cultural Revolution heats up, the entire troupe ends up victimized in a struggle session. All the main characters end up betraying one another in an attempt to protect themselves from further persecution, and the film ultimately ends in tragedy. So you're probably thinking the same thing I did, which was, how was a movie that was this critical of the Chinese Revolution allowed to be made? Well, it just so happens that in the 1990s, the Chinese government was trying to do what they could to improve the country's image. The international community had reacted badly to the news about certain shocking events, such as the one that happened on the date that my previous episode aired, 36 years before, and damage control was on the agenda. Not only that, but it had become permissible, even fashionable at the time, to look back on the Cultural Revolution with a critical eye, particularly the way it destroyed art and other aspects of Chinese society, including medicine and education. Fifth-generation Chinese cinema, which was characterized by visual experimentation, allegory, and greater overall creative freedom that departed significantly from the state-sanctioned propaganda filmmaking of the 50s and 60s, often wrestled with these topics. However, despite the relatively more open-minded filmmaking environment, Farewell, My Concubine still came up against some serious roadblocks within its domestic market. It premiered in Shanghai in summer 1993, but after 2 weeks it was removed from theaters for further censorial review, then banned 2 weeks later. What ended up saving the movie from total censorship was the fact that it won the Palme d'Or prize at the 1993 Cannes Film Festival, the most esteemed film festival in the world. So everybody knew about this movie and they liked it, and they were in a tizzy about its ban in China, so Chinese officials, who were still running damage control and gunning for the chance to host the 2000 Summer Olympics, felt obligated to resume public showings of Farewell, My Concubine, as a show of being a free country. So it returned to theaters, albeit with the bits about homosexuality and the commie shenanigans of the Cultural Revolution cut out. So basically, all of the most compelling parts of the movie. Whatever your opinion on communism may be, they sure know how to ruin a work of art. I have mixed feelings about the film. On the one hand, I was pretty moved by it. It stirred in me a sense of pride in my cultural heritage, in the beauty and uniqueness of Peking opera. And on the other hand, I felt that it was a bit too deliberate, and I suspected I was being emotionally manipulated. Everything just went so badly for the main characters that it bordered on absurd, like they couldn't have even one thing go well for them. Not to mention the first segment of the movie showing Douzi and Shito's childhood amounts to a jaw-droppingly long and brutal montage of child abuse. My husband Aaron actually gave up on watching it with me after one of the opera troupe children, miserable and ashamed and tired of being beaten black and blue every day of his life, hangs himself. It sets a certain, very distressing tone for the movie, which by the end sees all of its characters persecuted and traumatized in some way or another. They are relentlessly abused by their teachers, by their countrymen, and most devastatingly, by each other. The Cultural Revolution, as experienced by Chen Kaige himself, was characterized by these intimate betrayals, as close friends and family members were regularly pressured to inform against one another in order to prove their devotion to Chairman Mao and Communist China. I've spent a lot of time talking about the movie's historical context, but actually, if you ask the director, he was primarily concerned with exploring larger themes like love, loyalty, betrayal, and retribution. By weaving this tale about the relationship between Jie and Xiaolou and the love triangle between the two of them and Xiaolou's wife, Juxian, the push and pull that takes place throughout the decades as Jie and Juxian try their best to separate Xiaolou from the other. And although there's much to be said about the performances of Gong Li and Zheng Fengyi, who played Juxian and Xiaolou respectively, this movie very much belongs to Leslie Cheung. Notably, Leslie almost didn't land this role. Chen was looking for someone with a lot of star power who would draw in viewers. Melodrama wasn't the most popular genre at the time, so he needed someone people would want to go see regardless. When Hong Kong actor John Lone expressed interest, Leslie bowed out, figuring there was no way he was going to get the role since Lone had some relevant Peking opera training. But Lone didn't make it past contract negotiations with the producer, and the part ultimately went to Leslie. Thank God. Do you want to know who they tried tapping first for the part of Jie? Jackie Chan. Can you imagine? It would have been unwatchable. Luckily for everyone, Jackie Chan is too homophobic to take on a role like this. I've talked a little bit about Leslie before on the program, way back when I watched Wong Kar-wai's Days of Being Wild. He played the beautiful and unattainable bad boy Yuddy in that movie, and while I didn't much care for the character, I think that speaks to how well he was able to execute the role. I had so much else to talk about during this episode that I've run out of time to really dig into his tragically short life and how his contribution made Farewell, My Concubine the iconic LGBT movie that it is. Not to worry though, this is not the last I'll see of him this month. That's all I have for you guys today. I'm Hannah Belinsky. Thank you for tuning in to Retro Reels, and I hope you'll join me again next time on another look back on the way things were.